Hi everybody, in this video we're going to discuss why bigger corsets appear to be less curvy than smaller corsets in the same style. When you're buying off the rack, then most of the time the hip spring and rib spring is the same for every size. And if you have an overbust corset, then the bust spring will be the same for every size as well. Let's take a look at the curviest plus size corset style I've been able to find of any off-the-rack corset brand. This is the Mystic City MCC 81 corset. This has a 10-inch rib spring and a 17-inch hip spring. It's actually between 16 and 18 inches because of the adjustable hip ties, but let's take the average and make that 17-inch hip spring. And this style can be made up to size 46, but for this example, let's take it in a size 40. So if you take a super curvy corset like this in size 40, you cut the size in half and the proportions, the rib spring and the hip spring, in half as well, then the curviness should look comparable. This means that the super curvy MCC 81 corset from Mystic City should visually have a similar amount of curve compared to a size 20 corset that has only a 5-inch rib spring and an 8.5-inch hip spring. The reason that I know this is because the circumference measurements, the waistline, the hip spring, and the rib spring, as well as the diameter of the corset, which is what you're seeing in pictures by how curvy it is, these two elements have pretty much a linear relationship. So if you cut the waist circumference in half, you also cut the diameter in half. If you want to see my math, here it is. So let's find a corset that is half the size of the MCC 81 corset, and let's see how it compares in curviness. If we're dividing all of the measurements by 2, we have a size 20 corset, and it will just be a little cincher. It would need to have a front length of 8 inches instead of the original 16 inches. It should also have a side seam of about 6 inches, a rib spring of 5 inches, and a hip spring of 8.5 inches. So let's put those measurements in the corset database, and we'll have a little bit of wiggle room here just in case we don't get an exact match. And alright, the circumference measurements of the Luna Extreme corset from what Katie did seems to match that. It's okay. The side seam is 6.5 inches, and the front will certainly be shorter than the MCC 81, but that's okay. Let's try an overlay. We'll superimpose the pictures and match up the waistlines here, and we can see how well the measurements overlap and see how similar it is in curve. So I had to rotate the Mystic City corset a little bit. It's definitely longer through the hip, but the hips of the MCC corset fits astonishingly well, just being superimposed on the model here, who is Miss Sugar Rush. The ribs look like they would probably be a bit gapey. Maybe that's the way that the Mystic City corset was stuffed out. Maybe it's the angle of the What Katie Did corset. There are a few different variables here. But what if Mystic City did not photograph the size 40 corset? What if this were, say, a size 36 in the picture? We can compare its proportions to, say, a size 24 corset, and that's a difference of 1/3 as opposed to doubling the measurements. So if we cut all the measurements by 1/3, then the 16-inch length should become about 10.7 inches. So we'll look for a corset that's between 10.5 and 11 inches in the center front. The 10-inch rib spring will become about 6.7 inches, so between 6.5 and 7 inches. The 17-inch hip spring will become 11.3 inches, so we'll try to find something that's between 11 and 12 inches and try to get close. So once again, putting this into the corset database, let's compare the MCC 81 with this trainer from Rebel Madness. So overlaying the two pictures, so the Mystic City corset fits the right side of her waist pretty well. You can see just a tiny bit of gaping on the left side of the hip here, but the model looks ever so slightly rotated to the left here, so that could be explaining why it's not a perfect fit, because the MCC 81 corset looks to be photographed like square, like dead on. And the rib on the left side here looks like it would probably gape, but I think this was also the same place that the fit looked off in the last comparison, so it might just be the way that this corset was stuffed for the product shot. But overall, the proportions of this extremely curvy plus size corset from Mystic City is not that far off from a more petite and moderately curvy corset from What Katie Did and Rebel Madness. But let's flip this situation the other way now. Here is a slim silhouette corset that I found on eBay. It has a rib spring of 4 inches and a hip spring of 6 inches. So it's not shockingly curvy, but you do see a little bit of curve to it. What they're showing here in the product photo, I'm guessing is probably a size 20 or maybe size 22. But let's see how it might look if we doubled the size, so we're making it visually into a size 40. So like I said before, when you're doubling the waist circumference, you're also doubling the diameter of the waist. So we need to scale this picture larger. But most brands keep the length the same for every size. So this means that the length looks to be about half of what it was if you're stretching the waist to twice as much. Also, like we calculated before, when you double the size, but you're keeping the springs the same, then the proportions will look to be about half as curvy. So let's take the hip spring and the rib spring of this corset and make it look about half of what it originally was. So this is the final effect. And you know, the stretched out looking busk and stuff notwithstanding, this is about how short and not very curvy the size 40 corset would probably look. It's no wonder that many people might look at a tiny corset that looks like this on the website. They buy a bigger size and they receive what looks to be a tube, and they wonder what happened. Of course, there are other reasons why a corset you might receive from eBay or Amazon might look a lot less curvy compared to, how it was on the website. I discussed in a few previous videos that many brands lace their corsets like this for the product shot, but they only show you the picture from the front, so it makes the corset look a lot curvier than it really is. But aside from that, and getting back to the proportions between bigger corsets and smaller corsets, this is unfortunately why many brands tend to only show their corsets on very slim models, because it makes the corset look proportionately as curvy as possible. And it really sucks that so many brands don't show their corsets on bigger models, because it is really helpful. But the industry does seem to be changing, albeit slowly. So hopefully this video helps you understand why bigger corsets appear to be less curvy compared to smaller corsets in the same style. If you have any questions, or if you have additional information and you'd like to add to this conversation, please let me know in a comment down below. Give this video a like, subscribe for more corset videos, and I will see you all next week. Bye!